And the second question is about the Patriot missiles that we showed the Ukrainians in the situation when such an incident occurs. Can there be even more of them in Poland? Was it a good decision? When it comes to making a decision, as Mr. General Nowak said, he was fully prepared to make a decision. If such a recommendation were issued, then of course the pilot had full rights. He had authorization to shoot. And here I have no doubt that the military made a good decision, that the military is in control of the situation, that the commander-in-chief, sending airships that were in this place, at this time, in which they should be, are making the right decisions. I do not have any comments on the actions and decisions taken. On the contrary, I have a positive assessment of the efficiency of the time taken, and it can be seen that every experience that we have gained, as Mr. Minister Kierwiński said, also means that these procedures are improved, changed if necessary. We changed the law on the authorization of the use of weapons. Let us remember that we operate in a time of peace. There are different rules for making decisions. The commander-in-chief and the pilot are obliged to follow different rules, who ultimately, independently, according to the commander-in-chief, makes the final decision. He has to consider the threat that the missile carries and the threat that results from its neutralization. And such decisions are effectively made by the Polish army. We had the opportunity to shoot down drones, and there was this situation from 9 to 10. Therefore, such a command was made to some of the airships, and such a command was not made to some of them. And both assessments are correct. And when it comes to missiles, this decision was the best possible, because the more Ukraine seals off its territory, the less threat there is for us. I mean, exactly those who said that sending a few missiles to the Patriot battery, where there are a lot of these missiles and threats, but it can head towards Poland, it is better to neutralize it over the territory of Ukraine than to pose a threat to Poland. I would like to add one more sentence, if you allow me. Yesterday, as you know, I also talked to President Zelensky about what is happening in the air over Ukraine and what can happen in Poland. And we both declared such readiness for full cooperation in all possible coalitions, teams over the safe sky, over us, and over Ukraine. I know that today it may not be very popular to speak well of Ukraine, but I know, and this knowledge is much more important, that Polish security is directly dependent on the effective actions of the Ukrainian troops, also in the air. If the Ukrainians had much more of what they are asking for all the time, then maybe this ballistic missile would not fly into Poland. I have no reason to be an advocate of Ukraine in the matter of the Patriots. The only thing that sits in my head and in my heart is how best to secure Poland. Ukraine is shooting at them. Ukraine is really liquidating Russian facilities because there is a state of war with Russia. And it is in our interest to support it in these matters, remembering what we need today, in a way that increases our security. So after this event, paradoxically, together with the Prime Minister, I will consider further assistance for Ukraine as soon as possible. Also, with the next Patriots, if there is such a need. Because our intention is that Ukraine does not lose this war. After my conversation with Zelensky, the matter is quite evident. In the next 100 days, he can announce this war, and this is 50-50. There is a lot of mechanism in the hands of the President of the United States, several other people. It is very important. They have decisions, for example, Ilona Maska, when it comes to Sterlinki and other systems. So a little bit outside of politics, it happens, in a sense. But it is also very important what Poland will do. When I talk to our allies from Europe, for them we are still, although there have been rifts, but we are still the point of reference. Europe is ready to behave like us in such situations, so I will declare once again. I realize the issue of various burdens that fall on Poland, Poles, which result from over 1 million Ukrainians, Poland, from the war itself. I know it all. I really walk on the ground. But whether someone will like it or not, we will do everything together with Prime Minister Kosyanki Kamyshev. so that in the matters of war with Russia, Ukraine will receive every possible help from us. And one more thing. There was a very accurate question here. It was the first question I asked the general. Listen, you know, in the end, because we are not talking about exercises anymore. These are not the appearances of the action. In the end, the general, the pilot, fortunately not a civilian. It is not him and not me who will say whether you have to shoot or not. And we are very careful about this. But listen, in the end, what happened counts, not what could have happened. Because that's what Prime Minister Kamyshev was talking about. We were maneuvering very close to the border, the Ukrainians too. The Ukrainian fighter was very close to this missile. 20 seconds before the time we crossed the Polish border, the Ukrainian fighter turned around. The risk that we would hit the Ukrainian fighter instead of the missile was also tangible. The risk that we would shoot this missile faster and it would fall on the territory of the inhabitants. It was also objective. So there are no perfect decisions here. There is no such heaven, neither in the United States, nor in Israel, nor in Ukraine, in Russia, which is 100% safe. These will always be decisions. The task of Prime Minister Kamyshev as the Minister of National Defense, mine as Prime Minister, I know that in this case we have the same opinion with President Naraki. There is full support for the military when they make decisions. Sometimes such, sometimes such. But we trust them, and so far it works. Mr. Prime Minister, I would like to ask, how did you know that this missile would fall on the uninhabited area since it disappeared from your radars and you only found its remains? This is the first question. And the second, why was the RCB alert not used? In fact, until 6 a.m., when the television and radio began to broadcast, the inhabitants did not know what had happened. This is a dose of over 100 kilometers from the border. This is not 5, 10, 15, 100 kilometers from the border. The best prepared for war in the air are Ukraine and Russia, of course. 3 years of military experience makes up for it. And the effectiveness of shooting, precise observation, if they are Patriots, it is 50%. If they are other tools, it is more than 30%. There is no perfect system today, and that's why we have to rely so much on human decisions, sometimes correct, sometimes not. This one was correct. Yes, the army, observing the sky, sometimes loses sight of the object, but it does not lose sight of the sky over the inhabited areas, over Lublin, over Krasny Star, over Belgorod. So it was important for us to have a full picture of what was happening over densely populated areas. Poland is quite densely populated, so of course it is not easy. And according to the general's precise report, our fighter regained contact, i.e., full knowledge of where the missile is just before it fell. So if it flew further, if it posed a greater threat, it would have been shot down.